Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. We're the place you come to cut through all the noise, get straight to what's actually shaping our world. Today, we are diving deep. We've got this huge stack of sources, articles, reports, our own notes, all focused on the big global and U.S. news from July 10th, 2025. And our mission, simple. Pull out the most important bits, connect those dots that might seem totally unrelated, and show you why it all matters. To you, this isn't just reading headlines, it's really looking at the currents driving things right now.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating, I think, is how many of these things, they look isolated on the surface, right?
Right.
But when you dig in, you see they're actually connected. They reveal these broader patterns. By the end of this, you'll feel genuinely informed, like you've got the insights to cut through that daily information overload we're all swimming in.
Absolutely. So let's kick things off with a big theme, global tensions and some really shifting alliances. We saw a pretty bold move from President Trump. It really sent ripples, didn't it? Just announced a significant 35% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum, plus tariffs between 15–20% proposed for other countries too. It feels a lot like the duties we saw before on China, the EU, but maybe faster this time.
It's definitely an aggressive stance. The administration's argument is, well, it's about protecting U.S. industries, jobs, even national security. That's the official line.
Yeah.
But critics, they're already sounding the alarm, big time. They're warning about, the risk of retaliation, swift retaliation, and ultimately higher prices for consumers here. Canada's response was immediate, called it unacceptable, and they're signaling they might hit back. That could escalate things really quickly. It's a high-stakes move.
Yeah, and it gets even more pointed. There's this huge 50% tariff on copper imports from Brazil, and they explicitly tied it to retaliation for what they termed a witch hunt against Jair Bolsonaro, the former president. Plus, threats aimed at the Philippines, Libya, Iraq, I think 22 countries given until the end of July to negotiate. That's a lot of pressure.
It is, and it's significant because the current Brazilian president, Lula da Silva, he pushed back hard. Rejected any U.S. interference or threats, as he put it, and economists globally, they're worried, seriously worried, warning about disrupting global supply chains. These things are intricate and obviously raising costs for American manufacturers and for you, the consumer. It really highlights this trend, maybe, of using tariffs less as an economic tool and more like a political weapon.
Okay, shifting from trade disputes to something incredibly tragic. The ongoing crisis in Gaza, we learned about this horrific incident. Israeli airstrikes killed 10 children and 6 adults. They were just waiting for nutritional aid. It's just, it underscores the humanitarian catastrophe there and raises serious questions about intelligence, precision.
Yeah, the perspectives are starkly different, as you'd expect. Israel's military says they were targeting individuals with militant affiliations. That's their justification. But Gaza health officials, aid groups, human rights organizations, they strongly condemn it. They're emphasizing, these were civilians, vulnerable people. The human cost is just devastating. The UN is now calling for an independent investigation, and the global outcry for a ceasefire, it's just getting louder and louder.
And speaking of ceasefires, diplomatically, things seem stalled, right? Prime Minister Netanyahu left Washington, no deal after 2 days of talks with President Trump. What's the holdup?
Well, Hamas has laid out its demands pretty clearly. They want a lasting ceasefire.
Yeah.
They want a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza and completely unhindered humanitarian aid, no restrictions, the failure to reach an agreement. It just means more suffering for civilians, prolonged suffering. And it keeps the pressure on, keeps the scrutiny on leadership on all sides. It's a really difficult stalemate.
Okay, so amidst all that tension, maybe a small glimmer of something on the diplomatic front. For the first time since 2022, actual direct high-level talks between the U.S. and Russia. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russia's Sergei Lavrov at the ASEAN meeting. And the focus was apparently new ideas for resolving the war in Ukraine. What came out of that?
Well, both sides said they exchanged new ideas. That's the official language. But no agreements were signed, so manage expectations there. What's interesting, though, is sort of parallel to this, Ukrainian President Zelensky got some positive signals from Washington about resumed military aid, including Patriot missiles. So you have this dialogue happening with Russia, but also continued strong support for Ukraine. It's just maybe a complex strategy, trying to de-escalate through talks, maybe, while keeping leverage. It's a very delicate balancing act.
Yeah, that's interesting. A hopeful sign, maybe, but it contrasts sharply with this massive military exercise that kicked off the same day. REFOR-PAC 2025, the largest U.S. allied Air Force exercise in the Pacific ever. And picture this, right, for you listening. High-speed jets, advanced drones, those huge tanker planes, all practicing together. U.S. Pacific Air Forces, Japan, Australia, What's the message there?
Oh, the message is crystal clear. Reform Pact 2025 is about simulating high-end air combat. It's about reinforcing collective defense. And it's happening, not coincidentally, amid rising Chinese military activity in the region. It's a very visible demonstration of interoperability, of deterrence. China, as you'd expect, criticized it, called it provocative, saw it as a direct challenge. She's got quiet diplomacy maybe starting on one side and very loud military signals on the other.
Okay, let's shift gears. Let's talk about some uncertainty in Russia and potentially a huge shift for the Kurds. News came out about the mysterious death of a Russian cabinet minister, unnamed, found in a field near Moscow. And immediately, speculation, was it an accident or something else? Foul play? What makes this stand out?
Well, the fact that they haven't named the minister is unusual. And the official preliminary autopsy finding no immediate signs of violence, that's being with a lot of skepticism. It kind of echoes this disturbing pattern of unexplained deaths among the elite in Russia. So Western observers are watching this very closely. It raises alarms about safety, about transparency. Sends a bit of a chill, really.
From that mystery to something potentially historic. Also reported recently, Abdullah Öcalan, the imprisoned Kurdish leader, he announced the end of the PKK's armed struggle, 40 years, declared a move towards democratic politics. That sounds massive.
It is potentially a massive turning point, absolutely, for Turkish-Kurdish relations. It follows an earlier call he made for disarmament.
Yeah.
So there's cautious optimism. You hear that from people hoping for a peaceful resolution. But there's also significant skepticism. Will it lead to real political inclusion for the Kurds? Will things actually change on the ground? It's a huge step, potentially, for peace. But the road ahead is still really complex. Lots of history, lots of distrust there.
Okay, let's pivot now. Let's dive into the economy. Some market signals, business changes, starting with the U.S. stock market, which is kind of puzzling. Despite all these geopolitical risks we've just talked about, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ hit record highs. The S&P closed at, 6,280.46. Seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It really does. And it points to this, well, resilience is one word for it. We saw really strong earnings, especially in airlines. Delta was up 12%, United surged 14%. Tech did well too, NVIDIA particularly. It reflects this strong travel recovery, general confidence, it seems, in corporate earnings.
Yeah.
But this disconnect, this counterintuitive move, it suggests investors are either like heavily discounting the geopolitical risk, or maybe they're betting it all gets resolved quickly. That disconnect itself could be a source of volatility down the road. Market optimism isn't always, a sign of real stability underneath.
Right. So what does this actually mean for you? For your portfolio maybe, or just how you're feeling about the economy? Analysts are still saying, hold on a second. They're warning that these escalating tariffs, even if the market's ignoring them now, they could definitely become a drag later, especially on sectors exposed to trade and just general consumer mood.
Exactly. Investors are watching that U.S.-Canada situation very closely. And any retaliation from other countries is a potential storm cloud that maybe hasn't quite hit the market's radar yet.
Okay, moving to global commodities and energy transitions. Russia had its lowest July wheat exports since 2008. Pretty bad. Estimated just 2.0 to 2.6 million tons. So their response, they eliminated the grain export tax.
Yeah, that low number was due to a whole bunch of things hitting at once.
Yeah.
Bad weather, storage problems, strong ruble, low global prices. Russia has this big goal, right? Boost agricultural exports 50% by 2030. It's part of their economic strategy. Cutting the tax might help short term. It shows Moscow's willing to step in. But will it spur long-term growth without fixing those deeper infrastructure issues? That's the big question. And for you listening, this stuff can ripple out to affect global food prices, availability.
And in the bigger energy picture, something else happened too, kind of related. OPEC actually lowered its global oil demand forecasts, and they cited weakening growth in China as a key reason.
Right, and look at the contrast. On the same day, Masdar and Iberdrola announced this huge joint venture, $5.2 billion, for an offshore wind farm in the UK. That's not just a business deal. It really highlights this major structural shift happening towards renewables. And it puts more pressure on governments everywhere to speed up building green energy infrastructure. You can really see the old energy landscape changing shape.
And finally, on the corporate front, a potentially huge move could change your breakfast routine. The Ferrero Group, Nutella, Forever Shaver, they're reportedly exploring buying WK Kellogg's, the cereal part of Kellogg, for maybe $3 billion.
Yeah, Ferrero's strategy seems pretty clear. They want to expand beyond just sweets, get into related food categories. They're aiming for like 5-7% annual revenue growth if this deal happens. If it goes through, it would really shake up the cereal and snacks world. Create a new major player. Of course, it'll face regulatory scrutiny. And then there's the challenge of integrating two very different companies.
Okay, let's shift focus again to Earth, space, and some pretty wild innovations. First, some bad news from orbit. Methanesat, that critical climate monitoring satellite. NASA declared it likely not recoverable, lost power earlier this month.
Yeah, that's a real setback for climate science, a significant one. Methanesat was crucial, designed specifically to track methane emissions. That's a really potent greenhouse gas. Losing it weakens our ability to monitor emissions just when countries are supposed to be hitting reduction targets. They're talking about replacement plans. But any delay, it hinders climate action. It hinders holding polluters accountable.
Okay, from a loss to a really cool discovery, astronomers found 3 ILS, only the third known interstellar visitor to enter our solar system, spotted just a few days ago. What's the big deal here?
The key is its path, its trajectory, its hyperbolic, super high speed. Unlike stuff from our solar system that orbits the sun in ellipses, this thing is moving too fast. It's just passing through. Came from another star system. And that gets astronomers really excited, because it's like getting a sample delivered from interstellar space. It can give us clues about how planets form around other stars without us having to launch a probe that takes centuries to get there. It's cosmic history delivered. Oh, okay, now for something really out there, and maybe a bit controversial. De-extinction. We heard that Colossal Biosciences, they're partnered with Sir Peter Jackson, Maori researchers, announced plans to de-extinct the giant moa, that huge flightless bird from New Zealand, extinct since the 1400s. Feels like Jurassic Park. It definitely pushes boundaries, uses CRISPR gene editing, ancient DNA. The goal is ambitious: reintroduce moa to New Zealand within a decade to try and restore ecosystems that were damaged when they disappeared. But it's sparking huge debate. Huge. Supporters see this incredible potential for ecological restoration, fixing past mistakes. Critics, though, they raise serious flags. Unknown impacts on current ecosystems, ethical questions. Do we really understand what we're doing? It forces us to ask big questions about our role, our responsibility.
And speaking of fundamental things changing, a weird scientific quirk could affect our clocks. Scientists just recorded the shortest day ever. Earth spun slightly faster by like 1.3 to 1.6 milliseconds. What does that even mean for us?
Well, it sounds tiny, but it's sparked this debate. For the first time ever, we might need a negative leap second, okay? Meaning we might have to remove a second from global timekeeping to keep clocks synced with Earth's rotation. And that's not simple. It could potentially mess up systems that rely on super precise time. Satellite navigation, financial markets, power grids, they all need stable time. It's actually a complex software challenge nobody's faced before. Shows how tied our tech is to these, subtle planetary changes.
Technology, right. Let's look at the global tech race. China keeps pushing ahead in space. Successful launch of the Xi'an 28B EO1 experimental satellite, their 37th orbital mission this year alone.
That's fast. It is fast. And it connects to the broader tech competition, definitely. And interestingly, NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, announced plans to visit Beijing right before they launch new AI chips designed specifically for the Chinese market. So NVIDIA's doing this really delicate dance, trying to tap that huge market in China, while also dealing with U.S. export rules designed to limit China's access to advanced tech. It's like walking a tightrope between giants.
Meanwhile, Europe's making moves too, right? In space tech. The UK and France jointly put funding into Eutelsat, European satellite operator.
Yeah, that's a clear strategic play to boost Europe's own capabilities in space technology. Digital sovereignty, they call it. Trying to be less reliant on U.S. or Chinese services for critical infrastructure. Space is increasingly seen as vital. For the economy, sure, but also for national security in this tech race.
Okay, let's bring it back home, mostly. Societal fabric, unfolding stories, starting with some big U.S. shifts. Workforce, immigration. First, the Supreme Court ruled 8-1 for the Trump administration, basically clearing the path for potentially massive federal layoffs across different agencies. That sounds huge.
It is huge. The decision lifted an earlier block. It affirmed the president's power, basically, to reorganize agencies. Could mean tens of thousands of federal jobs eliminated. And critics are worried about disrupting essential public services, sure, but also about the balance of power in government. It sets a major precedent.
And right after that, we get reports of stepped-up immigration enforcement, California, Arizona, raids, these self-deportation flyers. But then on the same day, another Supreme Court action kind of pushing the other way.
Exactly. It's complex. The Supreme Court also refused to let Florida enforce its law that would criminalize being undocumented. They left a lower court's block on that law in place.
Yeah.
So that's seen as a win for immigrant rights groups. And it really highlights this ongoing tug of war between states and the federal government on immigration. Federal enforcement might be up, but states are facing limits on creating their own patchwork of laws.
Okay, other domestic news. Terrible flooding in central Texas. Kerr County, Camp Mystic especially, hit hard. Tragically, the death toll reported was over 120, or maybe at least 32. The numbers were shifting. Just awful.
Terrible tragedy. And it's led to criticism of Governor Abbott's response. Some felt it was too slow, inadequate flood planning. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick then pledged to get warning sirens put in along the Guadalupe River. But this disaster, it's really forcing a conversation about flood management, about land use, about needing better warning systems, especially with extreme weather becoming more common.
Shifting to China, we see these really stark contrasts playing out. On one side, they just opened their first Legoland in Shanghai. Big investment in family entertainment, consumerism.
But right alongside that feel-good story,
Uh-huh.
this horrific health scandal in Gansu province. 233 children hospitalized. Lead poisoning. They ate school meals contaminated with ingredients tainted by paint. It's awful. It just throws China's uneven development into sharp relief. And it sparked outrage, understandably, about food safety, about accountability. A painful reminder of the problems beneath the surface of all that growth.
And globally, major unrest continuing. Kenya saw deadly anti-government protests. At least 31 deaths reported, over 100 injured, more than 500 arrested after a police crackdown. President Ruto actually authorized police to use force, even shooting protesters in the legs.
Yeah, that violent response drew immediate condemnation from human rights groups worldwide, raises serious worries about destabilization in Kenya, and it's likely to bring more international criticism, more scrutiny, a very concerning situation.
Okay, let's end on a couple of slightly different notes. Evolving wellness, cultural celebrations. First, this trend that's apparently booming, sleep tourism. Luxury resorts offering these special packages focused just on helping you get better sleep.
It definitely reflects, I think, this growing awareness that rest is crucial. In our totally wired 24/7 world, people are realizing sleep matters. But experts are also cautioning, right? While it's good to value sleep, this doesn't replace actual clinical care if you have a real sleep disorder. So it sparks that debate. Is this just commercializing wellness, turning basic needs into luxury products?
Interesting point. And finally, a positive cultural moment. The 2025 Essence Festival of Culture down in New Orleans earlier in July. Reports say it evolved its programming, aiming for more inclusivity, more relevance, celebrating Black excellence, community.
Yeah, Essence Fest plays a really vital role. It's not just a party. It's a platform for advancing social justice, economic empowerment within the Black community. It's important in shaping conversations, building resilience. A celebration, yes, but one with real impact.
So there you have it, a real whirlwind tour through just one day's worth of impactful news, July 10th, 2025. You've seen how these threads connect trade wars, peace talks, cosmic discoveries, de-extinction, shifts right here at home. Things you might miss just scanning headlines.
And it does raise that question, doesn't it? When you put it all together like this, what really stands out to you? I mean, think about it. We're pursuing de-extinction, literally trying to bring back the past, while at the same time, people are struggling, dying, waiting for basic food aid. What does that juxtaposition tell us about our global priorities right now?
It is a lot to think about. And maybe here's one final thought to leave you with. Consider that weird quirk about Earth speeding up, needing a potential negative leap second. Could that be like a metaphor for the sheer speed of change we're seeing everywhere, across all these areas? Rapid, interconnected, sometimes unsettling. What are the unseen ripple effects from all these seemingly separate events of just one day, July 10th, 2025? What will they mean for our collective future?